When a group of unjudged souls plots to flood the earth with the undead and inhuman life as we know it, only one group can stop them, the Rest in Peace Department. Starring Ryan Reynolds, Jeff Bridges, Kevin Bacon, and Mary Louise Parker, R.I.P.D. opens wide Friday, July 19th. I am Russell Ecks, and this is Geek Armada's review of R.I.P.D. Just like everybody else who saw the trailer for this movie, I immediately thought this was Hollywood at its worst, ripping off an already successful franchise by substituting minor elements in the plot and then drumming up a remake. And what franchise did they rip off, you ask? Well, none other than Men in Black. R.I.P.D. has all the same elements that Men in Black had. A wisecracking young lawman gets introduced to a supernatural world hidden within our own world. He then has to go out and protect the Earth from the forces of evil, all while under the supervision of a grizzled partner with demons of his own to deal with. That description could perfectly fit either Men in Black or R.I.P.D., the difference being that Men in Black has aliens and R.I.P.D. has dead people. But otherwise, they are almost completely the same. The only thing R.I.P.D. doesn't have is a neuralizer. However, I don't think a movie should be judged on whether or not it's similar to another movie, but rather on its own merits. So let's start to talk about that. R.I.P.D. has an extremely rich visual language, and the visual effects during the scene where Ryan Reynolds' character Nick dies are some of the best I've ever seen. Add to that the truly impressive visual effects used to show the dead version of Kevin Bacon's character Hayes, and you've got a very pleasing visual story. However, some of the plot points just don't make any sense. At the beginning of the movie, we learn that Nick and Hayes are both cops and partners. Together they've pulled off a drug bust that had some unintended benefits. They've uncovered a large collection of gold nuggets the size of potatoes. So then they decide to stash the gold away as a retirement bonus. But Nick gets cold feet and decides to hand his gold in as evidence. After Nick reveals his intentions to his partner, Hayes takes the first opportunity to kill him. Eventually we find out that Hayes is actually one of the unjudged souls that still roams the earth, and that the gold is part of an ancient device which will bring the soul of every person who has ever died ever back so they can roam the surface of the earth forevermore. So with that knowledge in hindsight, I don't understand why Hayes kills Nick. I don't even understand why Hayes let Nick take any of the gold in the first place. He clearly needs it to rebuild the device. The reasons why these things were written into the story is so that Nick can get killed, join the R.I.P.D., and have a vendetta to carry out. Basically, the writer reverse engineered the story to fit the premise. But if you think about it logically, there really isn't a good reason to kill Nick off in the first place. Why not just volunteer to hand the gold in for him and keep it for yourself? Another problem I had with the plot was the scene where Nick and Jeff Bridges' character Roy are engaged in a big chase scene with an unjudged soul named Pulaski, played by Devin Rattray. At this point, the movie's logic starts to become inconsistent and problematic. The two R.I.P.D. officers chase Pulaski throughout Boston, causing an enormous amount of destruction and revealing Pulaski's grotesque visage to the public. But only a few scenes earlier did we learn that Nick and Roy appear as an old Chinese man and a beautiful woman. This is done to both protect their identities and keep the public unaware that dead souls walk among them. Now, however, Pulaski is seen by hundreds of Bostonians as he rampages through the city. He even summons the ability to walk sideways up the surface of skyscrapers in his attempt to escape. I understand this was done to put a supernatural spin on the typical chase scene, but since we've already established a logic that gravity still has an effect on the main characters, and that the undead are not seen as themselves, then it makes very little sense to now have a gigantic VFX creature get away with all of this.
Might notice we're pretty durable.
Still hurts.
My last and probably biggest concern with the film is Jeff Bridges' characterization of Roy. Roy is an old cowboy lawman, a U.S. Marshal to be exact, and he is portrayed in the costume of his era. But Jeff Bridges made the decision to give a really hokey accent to his character.
Marshal Roy Cephas Pulsiver.
Roy Cephas?
It's considered a very sexy name at the time.
You got it.
Every time he speaks, it's hard to understand what he's saying. It actually is so bad it pulled me out of the movie in almost every scene he's in. My assumption is that by giving his character a bit of silliness, the filmmakers hope to reverse the comedic role from Ryan Reynolds to Jeff Bridges, so that their characters don't completely resemble the Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones characters from Men in Black. But if that was their intention, they failed. In fact, this movie fails to be as funny as it should have been. Jeff Bridges isn't exactly known for his comedic timing, but Ryan Reynolds got his start as a comedic actor. He's actually in one of my favorite comedies, so I know he's got some incredible comedy chops. But either through the scripting process, the production, or the editing of this movie, it failed to measure up to the movie it is most like. Say what you want about Men in Black 2 or 3, but the original Men in Black proved to be both an exciting movie and a funny one. With all of this negativity, I imagine that you expect me to give this movie a thumbs down. Well, I would, if it wasn't for one thing. This movie is pretty much what I expected it to be. Perhaps the studio failed to keep the script, the production, or the post from occasionally falling on its face, but they made up for it with proper marketing. How many times have you seen trailers and TV spots for a movie that make you think it's going to be about one thing, but then see the movie and find out it's about something completely different? R.I.P.D. didn't do that. They advertised the shit out of this movie, and in doing so, they set up a pretty solid expectation for what this movie actually is. This certainly isn't the best movie I've seen this year. This isn't even the best version of this movie I've ever seen, but since I had a good idea what I was getting myself into, I wasn't thoroughly disappointed when I saw it. And despite all the negative things I said, this movie has a lot of fun and exciting moments in it, if not the best or most original story I've ever seen. That's why I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. I won't recommend this movie to any snobby hipster friends of mine, but if you enjoy a fast-paced explosion fest with a lot of VFX, then this one's for you. Otherwise, I recommend just waiting until it hits Netflix, or better yet, go out and rent the first Men in Black movie. You won't be disappointed. Hey, thanks for watching, and remember you can always find more movie, TV show, and video game reviews at geekarmada.com.